Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Introduction to the Indian Patent System. In this lecture, we will be looking at how the Indian patent system came into being, what are the fundamental features of the system, and also we will be looking at a brief introduction to the intellectual property rights regime, which is what forms the greater part of intellectual property rights. So, this lecture will be structured into various parts. First, we will be looking at patent law as a system of concepts. Then we will be looking at ways to understand the Patents Act, and later on we will be looking at the legislations that comprise patent law, which are the Act, rules and the manual. So, first we look at patent law as concepts. Patent law comprises of different concepts, different legal concepts, and together they form the branch of law called intellectual property rights. But before we understand patents, we need to understand what intellectual property rights are. An IPR, or an intellectual property right, is a set of rights that come out of the creations of mind. For instance, inventions are protected by means of patents. Literary and artistic works are protected by the copyright regime, and names that we often use in trade and businesses are protected by the trademark regime. An intellectual property right offers exclusive monopoly right to the owner of the right, normally manifest on intangible property, and in that way they differ from real property. Intellectual property rights, as I said, it is not branch of law, it is a conglomeration of different areas of law. Patent law is itself a different branch of law. Copyright law is different from patent law in the sense that the modes of establishing the right, creation of the right and the enforcement of the right are much different in patent law and in copyright law. For instance, in patent law, to prove infringement, you will have to look at the document that encompasses the patent right, which is what we call a patent specification. Then look at the infringing act, which could be an act done by the infringer, and map the act into the scope of the right that is covered in the patent specification. This is how infringement is proved. So, the process of proving infringement is comparing an act committed by the infringer to the scope of right that is carved out in a particular document. Whereas, if we look at copyright, or even for that matter trademarks, the rights that are manifested in the trademark or the copyright are proved by a normal comparison of the infringing right. For instance, if there is a book that is copyrighted and there is also another work which is allegedly infringing the copyright, then all you need to do is read through the two books and see whether there is a likelihood of the one work being a copy of the other. So, infringement is proved by a simple mechanism of reading or comparing two documents. Similarly, for trademarks, the infringement is proved by looking at the two similar marks, and the standard is one of reasonableness. So, if it is reasonably found that one mark could not have been made without looking at the other mark, there is an initial case of infringement. So, even the ways in which infringement is proved are different when it comes to the different kinds of intellectual property rights. Then what is it that holds these intellectual property rights together? Why are they formed or regarded as a group of rights that are taught and learned and studied together? So we can come across various explanations. One of the predominant explanation, which is a classical one, is that these rights came out of some form of creative labor. Now, creative labor is something which we understand as being different from physical labor. So, creative labor, when it resulted in certain rights, those rights could be captured by these regimes. So, if the creative labor was a result of a person or a group of people coming up with an invention in a technological domain, then that right in the invention came to be captured by patents. If the right pertained to an artistic or a literary work which was largely expressed in some medium, then that right could be captured by a copyright. If the work, the creative work, pertained to a mark or a logo which ascertained the origin of the goods and services, then you had trademark, which came into as a right by which you could understand the origin of goods and services. Now, these rights do have a creative or an intellectual element, and that's largely the reason why they are called intellectual property rights. They also confer exclusivity to the right holder. So, that's a common trait for all intellectual property rights. They confer exclusivity to the right holder, and exclusivity means they have right to exclude others from using the right. So, if you have a patent, if the patent is granted by the patent office, in India it's granted by the intellectual property office, then you have an exclusive right to use the invention for a period of 20 years from the date of application. Now, this is actually not an exclusive right to use, it's actually a right to exclude others from using. It also includes a set of rights. For instance, you can exclude others from manufacturing, exclude others from selling, exclude others from offering for sale, exclude others from licensing, transferring, and a whole set of rights are involved here. So, the grant of a patent in itself confers an exclusivity. Similarly, a copyright and a trademark also confer exclusivity. Now, these rights are different from the rights that vest in real property, because intellectual property, one way we can understand intellectual property is by distinguishing them with real property. Real property has borders and it is tangible. You could ascertain the limits of the real property in time and space. It's possible for you to, if the real property is a land, you could go to the site and ascertain the boundaries of the property. To ascertain the boundaries of a patent right, it is not immediately discernible by looking at the product in which the patent manifests. The product may have a notification somewhere say that it is covered by a patent showing a number, but you would not know what is the extent of the right covered in the patent unless you look at an external document, in this case the patent specification or the granted patent. So, the right that manifests in a patent is actually a created right. It's not apparent, it is not open in a sense that a person can see the technology and understand that it is patented. It is created because the right was carved out by a legal mechanism where the law offers such rights to be carved out, and the right is protected by documentation. By documentation, we refer to a process of registration by which the right is recognized. There are certain rights which does not require any registration. For instance, the right of a parent over a child, that comes out of a relationship between the parent and the child, which the world recognizes by the fact that the child and the parent live together. Whereas other rights are created. For instance, a patent right is created, it is carved by distinguishing the invention from what had gone before. So, in the case of patent rights, you need to go through a process of registration. Now, the process of registration starts with a person filing a patent application before the patent office, and the patent office scrutinizing the application for certain checks, and later on the patent office granting this application into a granted patent. This process, the application goes from a formal application and it materializes into a grant, is what we call patent prosecution. Once the patent is granted, then the enforcement of a patent, which refers to steps taken by the patent holder to ensure that the patent is not violated, the right in the patent is not violated by others, which is what we refer to as infringement. The enforcement part happens before the courts. So, the patent office or the intellectual property office, the task of the intellectual property office is to scrutinize the patent application and grant a patent, whereas the courts or the judicial system is entrusted with the task of enforcing them. So, if there is an infringement of a patent, the patent holder will have to file an infringement suit before the courts. Now, in a modern environment in which we live, there is need to protect intellectual property. The need to protect intellectual property arises from the fact that we are now living in a knowledge economy, and the knowledge economy is distinguished by who has access to knowledge, not only who has access to knowledge, but also who is able to use this knowledge to his or her benefit. Intellectual property actually gives exclusivity over use of knowledge and information in one form or the other. The intellectual property regime that we have in India has actually been a result of various international arrangements that came about in different branches of law. So, you had the Patents Act, which started off with the Paris Convention in the 19th century, and later on we had the TRIPS agreement as a part of the WTO regime. So, if you look at the history of patent law, that is from the international legal system, we can find that patent law, like other intellectual property regimes, are actually pushed down by a group of countries to other countries, in the sense that the norms are made at the international level and then they are replicated or they are adopted at the domestic level. So, which is true for India. The Indian IP regime started off as British Act, the Patents Act of 1911, which was brought into India when the Britishers were ruling the country. Fundamentals of patents. Patents offer an exclusive monopoly right. This right is conferred by the government and it is for a period of 20 years from the date of application. The exclusive right pertains to the right to make, sell, use, offer for sale or import the invention. The exclusive right is actually a right to exclude others. So, there you have a right to exclude others from making, selling, using, offering for sale or for importing the invention that is covered by the patent. Patents are territorial in the sense that if the Indian Patent Office grants a patent, it is not enforceable in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Pakistan or any of the neighboring countries. So, patents are granted by the local patent offices, and because they are granted by the local patent offices, the territory of their operation are also limited to the jurisdiction of those offices. So, an Indian patent can only be enforced within the boundaries of India. They are granted for a period of 20 years. Patents serve different purposes. Now, the object of a patent or the grant of a patent could be to identify area and technology and to do further work. So, filing a patent gives the patentee or the patent owner the right to work in a particular sphere to the exclusion of others. So, whatever products that can come out of that technological area can now be carved as a right by the patent holder. Patents are also seen as instruments that can incentivize innovation. By offering a limited monopoly for the inventor, the patent system actually incentivizes people to take risky tasks like spending time, effort and money in developing inventions. In a world without patents, it would be very difficult for people to invest time and resources in coming up with new inventions. In a world where there are no patents, if a person comes out with an invention, there is all likelihood that a competitor could steal it or copy it and enter the market. So, patents grant a protection for people who would invest time and effort in creating new things. As we mentioned, we derived this regime through certain international conventions like the Paris Convention, the TRIPS agreement, which stands for trade related aspects of intellectual property rights, which is a part of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And also we have some arrangements between countries to facilitate patent filing internationally, like the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the PCT. As we mentioned before, the Patents Act in India came as a British import. The Britishers, when they were ruling the country, they had brought in the Patents Act of 1911, which was largely the British Act itself. But soon after independence, it was felt that because patents are tied closely to the development of a nation, it was felt that India required its own patent law. So, post independence, there were two committees led by experts, the Tekchand Committee and the Iyengar Committee, which were established to study whether the existing patent regime, which was the 1911 Act, suited the national interest and more particularly at the stage in which India was a newly independent country and trying to make its place firm in the global economy. And it was found by both the committees that the Patents Act as it existed does not favor local and national development. So there was a proposal by the Tekchand Committee followed by the Iyengar Committee to revise the patent laws. And the 1970 Act, which is the present act that we have, came as an exercise that was suggested by taking all the measures the committees had suggested. So the 1970 Act, for the first time, it removed product protection for medicines. Earlier, the 1911 Act had offered product protection for product patents, what we call product patents for pharmaceuticals and drugs. Now, this was removed by the 1970 Act. The 1970 Act also made some substantial changes on the term of the patent. The term of a patent was 14 years, and the term of a patent for a food, medicine, or drug was a shorter period. It would vary between 5 to 7 years. And there were also a host of provisions on compulsory licensing, which was introduced by the 1970 Act. The 1970 Act was after India became a member of the World Trade Organization in 1995. The Act came to be amended 3 times, in 1999, in 2002, and in 2005. These were all amendments that brought the Act in compliance with the TRIPS agreement of the WTO. The TRIPS agreement, being an international agreement, it brought a common standard on various things. For instance, the TRIPS agreement brought in, and the TRIPS agreement was actually a product of close to 8 years of negotiations between the member countries. It brought a common standard that the term of a patent shall be 20 years from the date of application. India earlier had a 14-year period for inventions in general and a shorter period for patents, inventions pertaining to food, drug, and medicine. Now, this had to be changed. So, apart from this, the fact that the Indian patent regime did not grant product patents for drugs and pharmaceuticals was also to be done away with. So, the Indian patent system went through a series of amendments to the Patents Act in 1999, followed in 2002, and later on in 2005. These 3 sets of amendment brought the Indian law in complete compliance with the TRIPS obligations. Soon after amending the Act, the rules were also amended. Now, the rules are subsidiary to the Act. They perform, they are what we call delegated legislation. The central government has the power to make the rules, whereas the acts have to be acts that are passed in both the houses of the parliament. So, we had a substantial turnover in 2003 where new rules were framed. These rules were amended in 2005, 2006, in 2013, 2014, and lately in 2016. So, with the amendment of the Patents Act in 2005, we now offer product and process patents irrespective of the technology. Earlier, there was a distinction that product patents need not be granted for drugs and pharmaceuticals. Now, that is gone. So, the 2 kinds of patents broadly that can be granted under the Indian Patents Act are either for a product or for a process.